Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the MC for this evening, President and CEO of the Skoll Foundation, Sally Osberg.
that Soweto Gospel Choir. You know, they've won every musical award on the planet. They were the first South African artists to perform for the Academy Awards. And I can't think of a better way to open tonight's celebration. Let's hear it again. Welcome, welcome everyone, and a special welcome to all the family members who are here and to the audience watching with us online. This is the 2015 Skoll Awards for Social Entrepreneurship. We're going to do some time traveling tonight, so buckle up and get ready. We're going back 8 centuries in time to a specific moment and a specific place. It was 800 years ago, just down the Thames from here at Runnymede, that King John set his seal to the Magna Carta. He didn't do so willingly. He was forced. Not by the most oppressed, who then, as today, were focused on simply surviving. No, he was forced by men powerful enough to challenge him. The rebellious barons were sick of him. They were fed up with his raids on their property, his wars with Roman France, his taxes, his goons, his brute abuse of his divine right to rule. Those angry barons meant business. They didn't send a delegation to negotiate, but showed up en masse, thousands strong. With no social media to organize them, they organized nonetheless. Their goal? To occupy Runnymede, to present their demands and seal the deal. The popular view of the Magna Carta is that it ushered in the keystone ideas of democracy. In fact, it was full of what in the US we call pork. Its 62 clauses were full of special benefits for special interests. But the document also enshrined a set of fundamental values that have stood the test of time. The king could no longer wield absolute authority. Free men were granted the right to justice and a fair trial. England and the world didn't change that week in June 1215. The Magna Carta only protected the elite of medieval times, the 1% who owned property. It was a far cry from a guarantee of equal protection for all. But the ambition to see justice triumph over power stoked the early embers of freedom. And across the ages and around the world, the flame caught, blazing the way for all. No one remembers today the names of those barons, but we know the names of those who carried that flame. Thomas Jefferson, Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, all cited the Magna Carta in claiming rights for their people. And the suffragettes drew upon the Charter in their fight for women. All moved the world forward. The crossroads where we now stand is not so far from Runnymede. The 13th century, like our own, was a time of conflict and upheaval. The Middle East was already a tinderbox as crusaders and jihadists fought their holy wars over sites like Jerusalem. Sound familiar? But amidst such violence and misery was also a time of invention, exploration, and discovery. Great universities emerged from Paris to Persia, and right here in Oxford. St. Francis of Assisi, the most gentle of fighters, cast off his robes and wrapped himself in sackcloth to challenge the opulence and the power of the Pope. I think we know why the current Pope took that name. Then as now, the driving force for change was the quintessentially human drive to set things right, to get beyond just making things better, to bring a true end to injustice and corruption, and to stop endless cycles of retribution and resentment. How? By imagining and then setting in motion a new world order. When we are challenged by dissonance, when the social contract under which we live, the way things are, begins to seem out of alignment with what we believe we can achieve, we are ready to create change. We seek to understand how and why people are excluded and denied opportunities, whether in our own communities or in very different parts of the world. And then, armed with that knowledge, we imagine what might be possible. Belief creates space for possibility. Conviction for a transformed order and the courage to act are what will turn the old equilibrium on its head. The only holy war worth fighting is the one against poverty, injustice, and destruction of the planetary home that is so precious to us all. The women and men we honor tonight have stepped forward to stand for an end to inequality and to overexploitation of the Earth's resources. They apply the speed and innovation of business with the scope and scale of government to shape a new social contract. And now, as we prepare to present the 2015 Skoll Award honorees, I want to acknowledge and call to the stage the social entrepreneur whose vision occupies a special place in our hearts and minds. From Canada to the Silicon Valley, from Hollywood to the Himalayas, from Manaus on the Amazon to Oxford here on the Thames, he has both prepared the way and traveled the road of a man convinced the world can change and that he was put on this earth to help make it so even with no divine right. It is my honor and my pleasure to ask you to welcome Jeff Skoll to the stage for the presentation of the Skoll Awards. First up, the Foundation for Ecological Security helps Indian villagers secure rights to publicly owned land. They learn to manage it sustainably and secure their community's prosperity.
Well, the biggest problem is, though we are a democratic state, we somehow do not trust our people's capabilities and capacities. Governments assume that they have to do something for the people. People are reduced to beneficiaries rather than actual players, actual actors determining their own lives. A good portion of India, 80 million hectares of land, which is almost like a quarter of India, are locally used as commons, as village commons, village pastures, village forests. But the government way of looking at it is these are wastelands.
Up to 30% of India's population depend on these common lands to eat and make a living. Yet very few people have formal rights to it. Without title, resources are often exploited by corporations and the government.
सबसे पहले तो ये जैसे कई वर्षों पहले तो घना जंगल ही था, लेकिन उसके बाद में इस जंगल में सरकार ने खूब कटिंग किया, तो लोग बाग कोयला वगैरह निकाल के जंगल को बर्बाद कर दिया और उगारा हो गया, जिसके अंदर कोई पेड़ पौधे भी नहीं बचे थे.
There's also a very serious and alarming rate of groundwater depletion. As much as 70 to 80% of India's dryland districts are declared dark zones. We are sitting on a bomb as far as water is concerned.
सामलाती से हमें क्या लाभ है? एक नंबर सामलाती से गांव की एकता व संगठन मजबूत रहता है. दो नंबर सामलाती से गांव की सभी सामलाती जमीन बची हुई है.
A critical first step in empowering villagers to protect these natural resources is to secure them tenure rights to the common lands.
We sit with governments, try and make them see the wisdom of restoring these so-called wastelands or degraded lands by passing on the tenure, by passing on the title to the village communities. That faith being reposed into the village is a prerequisite for the villages to start acting now.
With these newfound rights, the Foundation for Ecological Security supports villages to begin strengthening their forest and water management committees and preserving their natural resources.
पहले हम लोगों ने सारा मीटिंग करते करते भाई कटाव हो रहा है, इसको कटाव को रोकने के लिए, क्योंकि नाला में कटाव हो रहा है, सब जगह कटाव हो रहा है, इसलिए कटाव को रोकने के लिए धीरे धीरे ये काम के लिए तैयारी की है।
लेकिन इस ग्राम विकास में कार्य करने के लिए एपीएस की जो सोच है, जो हम प्राकृतिक संसाधन का प्रबंधन के काम के लिए कार्य करते हैं, उसके लिए सबसे मुख्यतः ये है कि हम ग्राम क्षेत्र के लोगों के साथ अच्छे से जुड़े, जो एक पार्टनरशिप बिल्डिंग वाली चीज़ें हैं कि ग्राम स्तर के जो लोग हैं वो अच्छे से हमें विश्वास कर सकें, हम एक संबंध बना के उनके साथ काम कर सकें ताकि उनको मुद्दों को गहराई तक हम समझ सकें।
We strengthen community institutions, that is rules and regulations of how they manage their village life, their land and water resources. We help them restore degraded ecosystems. And you can see them impacting directly in reducing hunger and poverty, in reviving democratic functioning in village level.
जिससे हमारा फ़ायदा काफ़ी हुआ। जैसे फल फूल जो गायब हो चुके थे वो भी अब मिलने लगे, पानी मिलने लगा, अच्छा, और घास मिलने लगी। और जैसे अब इस जंगल में पानी जो बहता है वो पानी, उससे हम नीचे अगर खेती करते हैं तो वो भी लाभप्रद है। तो कई सारा फ़ायदा है इस जंगल से हमको हुआ।
FES has partnered with over 6,600 villages across 8 states. Over 1.8 million acres of common lands are now being run by local communities who are transforming previously barren and degraded terrain into lush landscapes with improved forest cover, soil quality, and water tables.
We work in the interest of the local communities and partner with them shoulder to shoulder.
इसमें मजबूती है, मजबूती की ज़रूरी है। मेरा आपको एक ज़मीन का संरक्षण करे।
We respect them for their innate wisdom because they know the lay of the land, they know their interests. If they are pointing a finger where they want to go in future, we just walk the mile with them.
From the Foundation for Ecological Security, Jagdish Rao Pupula.
We started out thinking that we're in the simple business of helping village communities manage forests, pastures, and water. But they saw more to it than just trees, or for that matter, woods. We asked some people who were initially uninterested or somewhat opposed to our work, but later joined on and assumed important roles. They had very interesting stories to say about why they connect to commons. One was a reasonably well-off farmer who had his cropland adjoining the village hill, which the whole village was greening. The improved vegetation also helped soil moisture retention, which directly and significantly impacted on the productivity of his peanut crop on the adjoining farmland.
the commons in the area were directly contributing to the pockets of farmers who had their lands adjoining the village hill. The second was a widower who saw from the village activity the improved management of the pasture, resulting in improved fodder availability, thereby allowing his only daughter to cut and harvest the fodder in less than 2 hours and feed the animals instead of having to take them to graze throughout the day. This helped her to resume going back to school. So what we saw as a simple planting of trees was a larger story of how people connected ecologically, economically, socially, and emotionally to a larger picture of commons. These are day-to-day reasons why people in rural areas cooperate. So how do we, people living in cities, connect or relate to commons? I'm sure several of you stay in apartments or condominiums. If you can start visualizing them as commons, where we share a common piece of land, but we own our own apartments in it. We share facilities, we share resources, like we share the watchman, we share an elevator, we share maintenance fees. We form our own associations where we set up rules to self-regulate. These are also very similar to the design principles which village commons operate on. And it is in the coming together of these village commons, pastures, forests, water, along with new generation commons like Linux, Wikipedia, Creative Commons, that we can hope for a future where the community ownership is seen as an equally strong and viable proposition for governing all manner of shared resources instead of relying excessively on state control or privatization. I would like to celebrate and share this award with the many communities that manage commons across the world, including this very village that we are in. Yes, Oxford manages some 10 square kilometers of registered commons and village greens. In the years to come, we would like to continue our work with state governments in India and build layers of rights over community land and water resources to the already huge investments that they are making on such resources. Commons need commons to reinforce one another. Please join our efforts in this. Thank you very much.
Blue Ventures is dedicated to advancing a simple but radical concept that protecting the ocean can go hand in hand with improving livelihoods. Taking less can lead to having more.
I'm trying to create a world in which people interact very differently with the ocean, in which people understand that taking less out of the sea actually gives everybody a huge amount more. There is no asset class in the world that recovers as quickly as fisheries can if we just give them time. And we know this, but we're stuck on the how we get there.
The decline of fish stocks worldwide is a critical problem for livelihoods and for food security. About 97% of the world's fishers live in the developing world. These fish stocks are collapsing because of overexploitation, and with climate change, these problems are only becoming much more severe. I recognised increasingly that conservation wasn't just about me, a biologist counting species. Conservation needed new tools, it needed entrepreneurship, it needed social marketing, it needed new ways to engage people. I decided to hang up my diving fins and really try to develop business-based solutions to the problems I was seeing. So I was a reluctant social entrepreneur.
Our work as an organisation addresses the pressing problem by working with people that depend on the sea more than anyone else on the planet, some of the poorest coastal communities in Africa, and listening to them and understanding what the barriers are that they face when we talk about conservation. We've come up with approaches, we've come up with new models, new ways of designing marine protected areas whose goal isn't necessarily conserving biodiversity, but recovering fisheries.
In 2004, Blue Ventures encouraged residents in coastal Madagascar to try cordoning off a small section of their octopus fishing area for a designated period of time. When the area reopened, the community was surprised to discover what had happened.
By targeting the fisheries that are important to people first, using this closure model, here in Madagascar, the octopus recover with a monthly internal rate of return of 92%, doubling your money in a month. So we use these very fast reproducing species that are important for local markets to demonstrate to communities recovering fisheries can be the best investment opportunity out there.
Fa mahazo zalabe azo vila lamba azo vila sakafu bumisy vila tobota vila koa mbohadarie.
We employ community members that we train to collect fisheries data on the catches that they're bringing out the water from one day to the next. We use a number of approaches, including data books on beaches and mobile phones and all kinds of apps that we're developing to streamline the process, to improve its efficiency, and we can track the effectiveness of those protected areas.
Dia manome andraikitra feno fokon'olo amin'ny fanapahan-kevitsy ny mahakasika an'izay fametrahana izay faritsarovana izay. Dia ny fokon'olo roa manapa-kevitra an'izay fanapahan'izay reserve izay.
Most excitingly, as a conservationist, what we've seen is that this approach catalyses interest at a local level in conservation writ large, in creating marine parks, permanent marine reserves within which all forms of fishing are prohibited to enable other stocks to recover.
Blue Ventures now works with communities to create mangrove, coral, and seagrass reserves on thousands of square miles of ocean. Along with training workshops and community exchanges, fisheries authorities in Madagascar, Mauritius, and Tanzania have adopted the model, with others in progress. Blue Ventures has also integrated family planning and maternal and child health into its work, impacting tens of thousands of coastal residents.
We need a whole new approach to the way that we get people talking about conservation by demonstrating in a very visible, immediate and tangible way that conservation reaps dividends and gets people behind the movement, and that's what we can do.
From Blue Ventures, Alistair Harris.
Thank you all. 10 days ago, I was traveling between two fishing villages bordering the Mozambique Channel, two very different communities. One sits alongside a vast coral reef, the other in the heart of a muddy mangrove forest. Their fishermen and women catch very different species, but both share an intimate dependence on the sea for food, for income, their very cultural identity. In both villages, there's no alternative to fishing, and people are struggling to find enough fish to survive. The nomadic Vezu people that live on this coast are master seafarers, and they see and feel the declining fisheries from one day to the next. They journey, as I did, by dugout canoe, often traveling for more than 1,000 kilometers in open canoes in search of viable fish stocks. Living in shelters on isolated sandbanks dozens of miles out to sea with no fresh water, no shelter from tropical storms, no rights to the resources on which they depend. We call these people small-scale fishers, but the only thing that's small about them is the size of their boats. With more than 1 billion people living around our tropical coasts and hundreds of millions depending on fisheries like these for survival, perhaps we need to recognize that in reality, these are the world's not so small-scale fishers. A decade ago, witnessing this human struggle alongside a biodiversity crisis, my work as a biologist felt disconnected from the drivers of the changes I was documenting. What do the wonders of biodiversity mean to a family living on the front lines of climate change, to a family struggling with the grim reality of collapsing fisheries? Out there, conservation's about people, their daily needs, the incentives to change fishing for the better, and their motivations for enduring the opportunity cost of protecting nature. It's these incentives and motivations that must become our currency as conservationists. Finding truly replicable models to motivate real change must be our goal, because when we get this right, when we make sustainable fisheries make real sense to this not-so-small-scale sector, we have a hope of putting conservation in the hands of those with the greatest interest in its success. And this is exactly what those two villages have accomplished. Their models for managing their seas have gone viral, and today over 10% of their country's seabed now falls within community-owned conservation areas, with other countries replicating these models across the Indian Ocean. This is totally reimagining the way we think about marine protection. There's something that engages rather than alienates, meaning that it can be taken to scale and that it can sustain itself. We don't have long to fix the state of our tropical seas. This award will help Blue Ventures engage with communities in places we've never reached before, sharing our experiences with new communities across the Indo-Pacific and accelerating the opportunity to make fishing sustainable now and for years to come. Thank you all.
Although the Indian government has made big investments in girls' education, the majority of the nation's girls, especially in rural areas, do not complete 8th grade. Educate Girls mobilizes communities and schools to help girls achieve their full potential.
The school was really far. This girl would walk down the mountain, climb up another mountain, and every 20 minutes, she would shout back at her mother, and then her mother would shout back at her. So that they could hear each other, they knew that she was still on her way and that she was still safe. I used to cry every time I would think of her because she spent an hour plus every day walking across the mountains to go to school. It was just incredible to me that the sacrifices that the girls are willing to make just for an education. Things that we take for granted. India has the highest number of out-of-school girls anywhere on the planet. It has the highest number of child brides anywhere on the planet. and it has the highest number of women and girls in sexual and other forms of slavery. We live in a time where a goat is an asset and a girl is a liability.
गवर्नमेंट की जिम्मेदारी के रूप में गवर्नमेंट तो चाहती है कि 100% एनरोलमेंट हो, चाहे बॉयज़ हो चाहे गर्ल्स हो, लेकिन ग्राउंड लेवल पर जो प्रॉब्लमेटिक एरिया है।
क्यों लगता है? क्योंकि जो लड़की होती है वो राजस्थान में बेसिकली माना जाता है कि लड़कियां घर की लक्ष्मी होती है, पर ये भी देखा जाता है कि लड़कियों को हम पढ़ाएं नहीं, लड़कों को हम स्कूल में भेज दें।
नमस्ते आंटी जी। आंटी जी मैं एजुकेट गर्ल्स से आई हूँ, टीम बालिका हूँ।
I'm trying to solve the problem by first focusing on critical gender gap areas, rural, tribal, remote areas where the indicators for the girl child are the worst, and finding every single girl in those villages who's out of school, making sure that every single of those girls is enrolled back.
मतलब आपकी जो बच्चे हैं ना, बालिका शिक्षा पे हम जो काम कर रहे हैं, तीनों की तीनों लड़कियां हैं, जो कि मैं अभी अध्यापक ने बताया कि क्या बोलते हैं, ड्रॉप आउट।
The main way we do this is through our community volunteer called Team Balika. They're young, they're educated, they're passionate, they really want to see a change.
दो ये थी और दो वो थी।
We're actually building an army of champions for girls' education. And because the entire issue of gender is up here, that's the best long-term way to counter it.
स्कूल में नहीं थी तब तक घर पर काम मिस करती थी, इसलिए सोचा था कि मैं विद्यालय पढ़ूंगी। मैं सब कुछ पढ़ी हूँ, डिग्री भी हूँ, यहाँ सभी सुविधाएं हैं।
The model is a public-private partnership model because to get at really large scale, you have to work with the government, and it leverages a lot of underutilized resources, working with parents through school management committees, teacher training, doing community mobilization through village meetings.
पास में जो स्कूल हो वहाँ पे उसका नामांकन कराना, वहाँ उसको भर्ती करानी, मतलब काम करना ऐसी कोई।
सबसे अच्छी बात ये लगी कि आप ग्राउंड लेवल पर हमारे से जुड़े। ग्राउंड लेवल पर जो प्रॉब्लम हमारी एजुकेशन गर्ल्स को लेकर आ रही है, उसमें आप हमारी मदद के लिए आप जुड़े।
जैसे कि मैंने कहा 4 दूनी कितने होते हैं, 8, तो अपन क्या करेंगे स्टार्टिंग में।
So now we're focusing on improving the learning outcomes and improving the quality. I'm actually very optimistic because I feel that today is the time for this issue. If it was like 20 years ago, I'd have to first convince you about the importance of girls' education and stuff. But right now, the dialogue is building up. The huge momentum building up.
In its first district, Educate Girls enrolled more than 55,000 girls and reduced girls' dropout rate by 93%. By 2018, Educate Girls aims to reach more than half of India's gender gap districts, nearly 4 million students.
मैं पढ़ लिख कर देश की सेवा करना चाहती हूँ और जैसे कि मुख्यमंत्री है, प्रधानमंत्री है, ऐसा कुछ बनना चाहती हूँ और मैं देश के लिए सेवा करना चाहती हूँ।
I am a girl.
मैं आगे जाके टीचर बनना चाहती हूँ, लड़कियों को पढ़ाना चाहती हूँ। मैं भी दूसरी लड़कियों को, हमारे गांव में लड़कियाँ हैं, उनको ऐसे बोलना चाहती हूँ, तुम भी पढ़ो।
Not one girl has said to me that I don't want an education, I want to sit at home, or I want to look after the cattle. Every single girl I meet wants to go to school. And that for me is my biggest source of hope.
From Educate Girls, Safina Hussain.
Time to breathe. Today I'd like to tell you a story about a young woman, and her name is Padma. She's 22 years old, she has a degree, and is possibly the most educated person in her village. But things didn't start out that way for Padma. She was married at the age of 13, and then at her in-laws' home, she endured abuse and humiliation for over 2 years. Finally, when she just could not take it anymore, she ran back to her parents' home. And her in-laws were so angry at this dishonor that she'd inflicted upon them, that they came and they attacked her entire family. But thankfully, her father supported her. She stayed home, she got back to her books, she completed her school, and then finally got a degree. It's at this time that an Educate Girls staff member met with Padma and convinced her to invest her time and skills in getting other girls back into school. It's a cause that's close to Padma's heart. So today, Padma works to find every single girl in her village who's out of school. She goes door to door. She convinces, coaxes, cajoles the family members to bring those girls back into the school system. She works with village leadership to make sure that they could take control of the village school and make sure that there are toilets, there are facilities for the girl child. And then finally, she comes into the government school system to teach, to make sure that girls are learning. She does learning activities and life skills. Padma is an Educate Girls Team Balika member, a community volunteer who is shifting the equilibrium in favor of girls' education. Now, imagine 4,600 more Padmas. They are committed, passionate, catalysts working at the village level. They are challenging the status quo and deeply entrenched issues like patriarchy, gender inequality, and child marriage. George Bernard Shaw famously said, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself." Therefore, all progress in this world depends on the unreasonable man. At Educate Girls, Padma and 4,600 other unreasonables constantly question the exclusion of girls from education and persistently seek to unlock the transformative power that it brings. And gosh, we know what a phenomenal multiplier it is. Any indicator you pick up, health, hygiene, nutrition, population control, employability, anything, climate change, girls' education has a positive impact on it. I am here because these 4,600 Team Balika have helped to enroll over 80,000 out-of-school girls. And just in the last year, they have worked with over 1.3 million children. Most importantly, 4,600 villages are convinced about the merits of educating girls. Our vision is simple. By 2018, we want to create and nurture 15,000 Team Balika members who will benefit more than 4 million children each year in some of the most marginalized areas. And the Skoll Award will magnify the power of Padma to transform the lives of girls for generations to come. I am Safina Hussain, and I educate girls. Thank you.
The Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs in China translates obscure government data about environmental contamination. It creates practical tools that help business learn and take action to improve the quality of the air, water, and land for nearly 2 billion citizens and all humanity.
Yet again, air quality monitoring in the Chinese capital had shown the atmosphere to be severely polluted.
Schools are shut, flights cancelled, highways closed.
雾霾天气之后，没有找到原因，也没有找到解决办法。
Even Chinese officials call the air unbearable.
Scientists say the effect is like a nuclear winter, starving everything of sunlight.
I got the chance to travel in different parts of China in the mid-1990s, and I was struck by the environmental damage, especially the degradation of our rivers and lakes.
This river is Qiantang River, one of the major rivers in China. It's become one of the most polluted.
The air pollution now, about 80% of our cities cannot meet up with our rather modest air quality standards. And that has exposed hundreds of millions of urban residents to potential health hazards. I think that's not a future for China. And that's not a future for the world.
它3个口，它分了排，1个口、2个口、3个口。它如果1个口，它不是我分析啊，它不是就是一个大管子往那一出就算了，绝顶聪明啊这些。
为什么这么说呢？主动的变化方面，中央领导他已经意识到，过去这样的一种高投入、高污染、高排放的发展模式，已经不再适应于我们的国家了。
那个管子是怎么走的？是从那边这么走的吗？在哪个？
Enforcement remains to be weak. In other countries, people go to the court to use the judicial system to drive enforcement. But in China, environmental litigation is still extremely difficult, and the cost of violation continues to be lower than the cost of compliance. To change that, we have to strengthen enforcement. We have to make sure that all this information about the pollution discharge and the environmental management is disclosed to the public.
6趟，就是去到6趟在这个地方。我不知道您去过他们那个排放口吗？反正也是挺壮观的一个地方。那么印染行业呢，就高度集中在这些地区。 但是我们也看到这些地区呢，污染形势也都是非常严峻的。
This could empower the people to get involved to try to help supervise the pollution control efforts. So with that, I started this institute, and the first project is to compile all this environmental data to put it into a searchable, user-friendly platform. This is the pollution map. We are the first group who try to focus on transparency.
那么它的这种模式呢最大的亮点或者说最大的实用价值，它在于呢，一个是即时，一个是动态，一个是全民参与。这种互动不仅仅是个别企业、部分企业的，而是整个它对咱们中国就整个这个污染地头里面15000多家企业。 它是一个警示，是一个推动。
第二个呢 ，NGO 在这个过程里边，尤其在中国当下这个时间里边 ，NGO 的公信力可能要高于政府的公信力，所以有很多事由这个 NGO 来做。
I learned that with every 1,000 records put into our database, we can get one factory to respond, to change behavior. I feel that's, the most rewarding.
That database became a tool that Apple could use. We go and find the facilities that are a problem per their audits, and then we audit them. And then we work to ensure that any problems that are found have been corrected.
听到 IPE 这个呢，是大概3年以前，是尤其我们那个客户就尤其许多客户提出呢，如果要获得他们的订单，他一定要 IPE 这面呢消除一些不良的记录。
Since the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs began citing violations, over 1,800 factories and 120 international companies have taken steps to reduce environmental impacts within their supply chain.
In Beijing, I still remember those blue sky, the dazzling sunlight. We need to find our way to sort back our blue sky and clean water.
From the Institute of Public and Environmental Affairs, Ma Jun.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your attention and support to environmental protection work in China. China has achieved remarkable progress and growth over the past 30 years. But the environmental damage, is also very huge, exposing hundreds of millions to pollution hazards. Issues of such a magnitude cannot be easily addressed without extensive public participation. And for this to happen, people need to be informed first. Despite all the challenges and resistance, we IPE have sustained our transparency efforts based on the belief that eventually an informed public will not allow the water they drink and the air they breathe to suffer from this continuous damage. We're happy to see that under the increasing public scrutiny and through leveraging power of green supply chain, hundreds of these polluting factories started openly addressing their pollution violations. Good practice like this have further boosted confidence to expand transparency in China, which has reached a new high point in 2014, when the online monitoring data of thousands of major emitters began to be required to be disclosed. This is the first disclosure of this kind, the real-time disclosure, in the world, and a clear sign of China's political will to fight against pollution. And we put all this data. We put all this data into a cell phone app to help people's access. And people can tweet all this monitoring data, and they tag in the local environmental agencies. Such a new dynamic way of micro reporting have triggered positive interactions in key areas like Shandong and Zhejiang, and has resulted in pushing another 380 major coal power plants and other industries to openly respond, and quite some of them to try to fix their problems. Today, the numbers of downloads of our app have topped 3 million. Thank you. The Skoll Award will help us to seize this remarkable momentum and try to try to reach out to a lot more people in China through this whole new platform. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly honored and humbled to be the first Chinese citizen to receive the Skoll Award. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your patience. Please now welcome back to the stage, Jeff Skoll.
Thank you and welcome everybody. From time to time, the Skoll Foundation presents a special award to someone who can rightly be described as a global treasure. We don't have a formal definition for this award. We just know when there is someone in our midst who is doing special things in addressing the world's most pressing problems. Last year, we gave the award to Malala, the year before to Muhammad Yunus, and in 2011, the first time we made this award to our dear friend, Archbishop Tutu. This year, we present the Global Treasure Award to Graça Machel. Graça Machel is a hero to people all over the world. She devotes her extraordinary talent and energy and warmth to empower everyone to enjoy a better life. Her life story is a testament to the power of radical thinking, starting with the idea that all people are worthy of a good life and freedom and dignity. She grew up in rural Mozambique and from a young age set out to challenge unjust colonial life. Why should only a few fortunate children be educated and not all? When Mozambique gained its independence in 1975, she became Minister of Culture and Education, boosting school attendance and raising literacy rates even while the country struggled through a civil war. In the late 1990s, many encouraged Graça Machel to stand for the role of Secretary General of the United Nations. She chose instead to serve as an expert advisor to the Secretary General. She then produced a groundbreaking report on the brutal impact of armed conflict on children. This report opened the eyes of the world and has forever changed the lives of countless children who otherwise would have been caught in harm's way. Graça Machel founded the Graça Machel Trust and focuses on numerous causes, including women's empowerment, education, child marriage, food security, and democracy. Mrs. Machel is a founding member of the Elders, and she played a key role in establishing Girls Not Brides, a Skoll Awardee last year. Please welcome me. Please join me. Please join me in welcoming a true global treasure, Graça Machel. Now we have a rare opportunity, Graça Machel in conversation with Ann Cotton. Ann is the founder of Campaign for Female Education, or CAMFED. In 1993, Ann started CAMFED and helped 32 girls go to school in Zimbabwe. Today, more than 3 million children have benefited from CAMFED's programs all across Africa. Ann has won many accolades, including the Order of the British Empire in 2006, and was recognized with the Skoll Award for Social Entrepreneurship in 2005. Please welcome two incredibly inspiring leaders, Graça Machel and Ann Cotton. Ann?
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Well, it's my great privilege to be here with you to congratulate you on this award. And you have created so much treasure for our world. And you have, as Jeff said, played such different roles throughout your life. And you have done what's needed to be done. How have you used this, your work in the liberation struggle, your position head of government? How have you worked in your role as a civil society leader to influence, to get the influence and change you've wanted?
And let me start by saying I've never been so moved in my life like today. After I have witnessed what these different awardees sitting next to me and the incredible work they are doing, I just feel so humble and so small, and even questioning, well, how much or how well I have done along my life. And second, I would like to thank the incredible person who started this whole movement, Jeff, Sally, the whole team, which is today the Skoll family, for having had the vision of acknowledging different voices around the globe, value them, and give them a stage. Coming to your question, and it's not like a hat which you wear and then you change, you put there. My life is defined maybe as a journey in which freedom, human dignity, and social justice are the threads which instinctively, if I can say, tell me from my inner voice what I have to do, how I should do it, how do I take an opportunity to stand. I have to make it clear. These are not my causes. The causes I am engaged with are dictated by the people. First, it was my Mozambican people for freedom from colonialism. Then I was given the responsibility of being Minister of Education at the early age of 28. I had to learn how to organize the education system, and that I really understood from the onset how girls' education was fundamental. And I made sure that I would know in every school how many children, but amongst them, how many girls in every single grade, and even in every single classroom, because I wanted to understand the dynamics of how girls are coming into the system, how they progress or they do not progress. So it has started a long time ago. Then I was given an opportunity because of bad reasons. We had conflict in Mozambique, and I had to learn how do you give a second opportunity of a child who has been heavily traumatized to become a child again and to be able to learn and to enjoy being a child. So the Secretary General of UN asked me to lead the team which produced the so-called Machel study. Again, from the suffering of my children in Mozambique, I learned when I visited Bosnia, Colombia, you name it. I went to many different countries, Cambodia. I said, but it's similar. Every child has the same kind of so the protection of children, for me, it came as a call to give them a voice. More importantly, actually, to amplify their voice. Because we sometimes say that they are voiceless. No one is voiceless. The difference is that not everybody has an opportunity to have a platform where their voice can be heard, can be taken into account. So in all these different phases and what you called I influence, I'm amplifying the voice of women. I'm amplifying the voice of children. I'm amplifying the voice of the excluded. But it's not me, it's them who drive me.
This is a mark, though, of your humanity, isn't it? This humility, this listening. And there is this very strong inner voice. It's very clear because you have such authenticity. You have such strength of character. You have faced considerable difficulties in your life. And yet throughout, you seem to have been so strong, so resilient, so authentic. What's the well from which you draw? Where do you get this inner voice that's constantly amplified for you?
It comes from the eyes of children whom I interact with. And remembering that there are many millions of kids we have failed. Many of them died of preventable diseases. But there are many millions who are still out there, which we have to contribute to unleash their potential so that they can achieve whatever they want in life. So the strength comes from them again. I have been interacting with the women. We can talk whatever we want to say about women being oppressed, being, gender violence and all that. But who sustain our communities? I could say even, at least in Africa, if we have some kind of social cohesion, it's women who have the secret of that social cohesion. And I interact with them very, very often. It just comes so clear. They're much more resilient than I am. They're going through much more challenges than what I have had in my life. I have had more opportunities than challenges. It is true that there were moments where I thought, well, maybe it was a heavy burden on my shoulders. It is true, particularly in times of my loss. But in terms of challenges, I'm hugely privileged. And there are millions and millions of women who do not have the privileges which I have, but they don't have the platform. And because I have the platform, I say, with the privilege, it comes responsibility. And that's the kind of the source. That's the source of what I do. And even some people, many times they say, oh, but you speak so passionately. I don't think there's anyone who can look and listen to a child when a child blossoms and flourishes and expresses whatever this child feels. You are not going to feel like there is an inner strength inside you, which is telling you that everything is possible for this child. So that's where it comes from.
It's remarkable because, you know, you are going to meet a milestone, you were telling me, in your life, a birthday milestone. And there'd be many who would say, well, you know, I've done a lot, I've achieved a lot, and now it's my turn to perhaps relax a little. But what you're doing is planning for the next decade, planning the change, because as you say, you hear and see children, and you know how much there is to do. So this is a sustaining power in your life.
And also because, let me give you an example. Just in January, I visited Tanzania, and I went to one of the most affected areas in genital mutilation and child marriage and all those. At the end, after I met government officials, traditional leaders, religious leaders, different stakeholders, and we decided to establish an alliance which will bring all these strengths together to acknowledge that, I mean, child marriage is harmful not only to girls, but to families, to communities, to the nation, to our humanity, actually. At the end of this meeting of building this coalition, there are 3 girls who come and they say, Mama, in Swahili, they said, Mama, we just brought you this present. It is 3 girls who are in a center which is rehabilitating children who had been victimized by female genital mutilation and also child marriage. But these kids, I'm worried about them, and they come, they give me a gift. And what do you do in that situation? Of course, you feel that there's so much hope.
Yes.
There's so much transformation which is taking place.
Yes.
These children are not giving up.
Yes.
Who am I
Yes.
to
Yes.
give up?
Yes.
So yes. So it is one of those things where you feel while you still have energy.
Yes.
And if you can connect to the energy of these children, of these women, wherever they are, it is just a privilege
Yes.
to be able to be part of this chain.
Yes.
And that's it.
Wonderful. Well, you are such an inspiration for a social entrepreneurial audience, for a movement that Jeff began. What wonderful words, what wonderful anecdotes, what wonderful ideas you've shared with us. And I just want to, on behalf of us all again, congratulate you for all you do in the world, for being a global treasure. And I'd like to invite the audience to express the respect in which we hold you, the honor in which we hold you, and the love we feel for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talk about amplifying voices. I could listen to those voices, but more importantly, the world is listening to those voices. Before you leave Oxford this week, you might want to visit the Bodleian Library to see a 13th century copy of the Magna Carta. When I looked at that ancient piece of vellum, I found myself struck by both its durability and its fragility. Will the media recording of our time survive to tell the tale of how we made the world better? Safer from weapons, from disease, from destruction of all that sustains us? It may not matter. For rest assured, the great charter of our time, the choices we make and refuse to make, will hold us, our leaders, and our society accountable for generations to come. Centuries from now, historians will read of what we've done and failed to get done in the atmosphere, the oceans, in the DNA of our bones and tissues and blood. They will read in the Earth's record the story of common lands degraded and restored, over the Indian subcontinent. In the waters of China's rivers and streams, and in its air, how Chinese society pulled back from poisoning its environment. They will note the wave of discovery and creativity that enriched entire civilizations, beginning with the daughters and granddaughters of girls free to finish school. They will marvel at seas flush with fish, plenty to nourish coastal communities for centuries. And they will recount the stories of courageous women and men whose words and actions showed humankind what it means to lead, as Graça Machel and those we've honored tonight have shown us. The journey from the Magna Carta to social contracts fought for and won throughout history, the Emancipation Proclamation, women's suffrage, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, cover vast tracts of territory in mind and space. Each seismic shift has had its own iconic place, its Runnymede, its actors, its rebels. Tonight, we occupy Oxford. Like the barons who took over that meadow of long ago, we have shown up with our demands to rid the world of all that is flawed and dangerous and wrong. And we've also made our commitment to set our seal on a bold new future for humanity and the planet. Tonight and tomorrow, and over decades to come, a new social contract is being written. Thank you, and good night. Do you think we can get the Soweto choir to come out and sing us into the night? I think we can, but it'll take us just a minute to set up. So just sit tight for a moment. Thank you.
Put your hand in the hand of a man who calmed the sea. Take a look at yourself. You can look at others differently. Oh yeah. Hand in the hand of a man from Galilee. Put your hand in the hand of a man who stood water. Put your hand in the hand of a man who calmed the sea. Take a look at yourself. You can look at others differently. Hand in the hand of a man from Galilee.
Just put your hand.
Your hand.
Just put your hand.
Your hand.
From that man.
Your hand.
Of Galilee.
Your hand.
Put your hand.
Your hand.
Put your hand.
Your hand.
From that man.
Your hand.
Of Galilee.
Your hand. Put your hand. Your hand to that man. Your hand. Take a look at yourself. Your hand. Trust in Jesus. Your hand. Just put your hand. Your hand to that man. Your hand. Take a look at yourself. Your hand. peace and happiness in your soul. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Oh, let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
Lilo, Utama Sanjani, oh Lilo, ayo Utama Sanjani, Titia Lilo, Titia Lilo, Titina Lilo, oh Utama Sanjani, Lilo, Fatu Utama Sanjani, Titina Lilo.
Oh, Lord, ever needed the Lord before, so you need him now. Oh, so you need him now. You must be sure you need him now. Oh, Lord, if you ever needed the Lord before, so you need him now. We need him every day and every hour. Oh, Lord, if you ever needed the Lord before, so you need him now. So you need him now. So you need him now. Oh, Lord, if you ever needed the Lord before, so you need him now. We need him every day and every hour. Need him in the morning, 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 need him in the day, need him in the day, need him in the evening, need him in the evening. Oh yeah. And when my house still lies, need him in the morning, 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 need him in the day, need him in the day, need him in the evening, need him in the evening. Oh yeah. And when my house say holy, holy, need him the Lord. So you need him, so you need him, so you need him, so you need him, so you need him. Oh, yes,